What is up, guys? So I've got an old classic for you here today. I'm going to be giving you a bit of a Monarch deck profile, and here's a bit of a replay just from a game I played against Sky Striker. One thing about Monarchs which is really nice for the current format and just for kind of the recent meta, the last kind of year or two in general, is that most of the new decks don't really have too much to deal with Monarchs. Their biggest issue has always really been that they brick themselves a lot. But to be honest, most of the things that frustrate other decks don't really deal with Monarchs. You don't deal with the extra deck, which makes the deck very cheap. You don't really have much back row you need to care about. You do have Erupt and stuff, but it's so easy to recycle it. Even from Banish Zone, it's so easy to get those spells back that, again, that's not a huge issue. And just in general, like, if you can get one or two cards on field, like if you can get Vanities or Majesties or one of your Monarch monsters, you can lock your opponent out of the game so decisively, and it just becomes impossible for them to do anything, which is amazing. But yeah, so as you can see, I get out my Vanity Fiend. This guy puts up Mystic Mine. Now, what's actually funny is in my main deck, I don't have an out. So in this situation, we're both kind of locked. He didn't draw anything too special, and I don't have an out. So it's really just waiting for him. But then I put out the Domain of the True Monarchs as well to kind of completely solidify my advantage, because now he can't summon the extra deck, and any monster that he has is going to be destroyed. But I'm just going to carry on playing, because the thing is, he's definitely not going to be able to win either. He's going to need to get rid of that Mystic Mine eventually, which he does for the Airspace Zero, thinking he can move on to some more plays. But he doesn't really draw anything too good, so he afterburners onto my Fiend. But this is another huge strength of Monarchs. I can use the Aether to tribute over it and dodge it, and then he tries to Widow Anchor the second Aether, and I do it again, bringing out a Kuraz this time. I mean, this is kind of what makes Monarchs so great sometimes, that you can just keep using that Aether on your opponent's turn, dodge, removal, and really disrupt them in a cool way. And so he just kind of scoops shortly after that. So let's get into that Monarch deck profile. So there are a lot of different ways you can actually build Monarchs at the moment. The two most common you'll see is one like mine, where you're focusing on floodgating the opponent, and then you have extra deck Monarchs, which is also quite good, and I will be releasing a profile for that soon. But we start off with two Erebus. Erebus is a really nice monster to have in Monarch. So when you tribute summon him, obviously he's going to give you the ability to shuffle a card without targeting from their hand, graveyard, or side of the field into the deck. I mean, that effect on its own is amazing. Gets rid of most threats that you'll have to deal with. So there's no main deck outs to things like Mystic Mine and back row, but that's not too much of an issue most of the time. I tend to keep back row removal in the side deck no matter what anyway. But yeah, so that effect is really nice. He also will dump some Monarch spells and traps, which is great, and he recycles himself, which is why I play him at 2. You can even play him at 1 in my opinion. He's not really necessary. Once you've seen one Erebus, you're unlikely to need to see another one anytime soon. But Aether, we always play her at 3. Aether is such a good card, so when you tribute summon, obviously she's going to special summon a Monarch, or she's going to special summon a card with 2400 or more attack and 1000 defense from your deck, which is usually going to be your Kuraz. Sometimes you will summon your Erebus instead, but yeah, really good card. And she also will dump some Monarch spells and traps, which is going to be really good for getting those effects off. Then we play 3 Vanity's Fiend. This card unfortunately is not searchable because of 200 defense. Just that extra 200 defense means it's not searchable. If it was, it would be amazing. It would make Monarchs quite a bit better, but that's why we play it at 3. But such a good card. You get this on the field and it beats most decks. It's actually quite sad having this plus a Monarch's Erupt. Very few decks can get through that in their main deck, which is amazing. And then it only requires 1 tribute, which makes it go really well with Stormforth as well. Play the 1 Majesty's Fiend because that is searchable, and this card is amazing. This is basically just Mystic Mine. It's just, it locks down all monster effects. You can't activate monster effects anywhere. They can't even attempt to activate them. It's what makes it so good. And then obviously because we can search it, that makes it a very nice fit for our deck. Kuraz is a lot of our draw power, and he's also disruption. You don't usually use it on your opponent, just because one risk of using it on your opponent is obviously that they are going to get 2 draws, which sometimes you don't want, but it can be useful in some situations to use it on them. And it is really good to use on your own primes or extra spell cards, or even on itself, just to get those draws. We play 3 Red Layer. Red Layer is such a good card for Monarchs, just because it provides you with consistent tribute fodder. Once you see 2, it's like you can just keep looping them, and every turn you get free tribute fodder for your Monarchs, which is really nice. We also play 1 Mithra and 1 Eidos. So the reasoning behind these ratios of 3 Ideal, 1 Eidos, 1 Mithra is mainly this: you don't want to see more than 1 Eidos, and most of the time in Monarchs you don't actually need 2 tribute summons. You don't actually need 2 tribute summons. You're almost always either going to have a Stormforth, so you can use your opponent's monster, or you're going to have Domain, so you can tribute over so you can reduce your monster to 1 tribute, or it's going to be a case where you're not even summoning one of your level 8s, you're summoning one of your level 6s or 7s, and so you don't need 2 tributes again. And this is why I don't think the Eidos becomes as necessary most of the time. I really don't want to see him. If I see him, it is an issue. Whereas Mithra, if I see her, I'm quite happy to see her in my hand, even if I have a monster on field anyway. So that's why I only play 1 Eidos and 1 Mithra. And then the 3 Idea. Idea is actually good, not just because she summons Eidos and Mithra, but the other thing that makes her so strong is the fact that she recycles our banished Monarch spells and traps. And this is what I was talking about before, where even if you get Cosmic Cyclone on your Erupt and stuff, it's going to come back to your hand. And you've also got Prime Monarch to recycle spells and traps as well. So really, it's rare for me. If I'm playing a Monarch spell or trap at more than 1, it's either because I know I'm going to be popping it off Kuraz, or it's because I want to have extra copies, because extra copies actually do something. I think Return is probably the only exception because it's such a good card. But pretty much everything else I actually play at 1. So I've got the 1 Erupt, the 1 Escalation, the 1 Domain, because I know for a fact it's going to come back to my hand no matter what happens. Moving on from that, we play 1 for 1 because it's a great card and it summons Idea. We play Pantheism. I mean, when this card comes back to 3, it will be nice. It won't make Monarchs meta, but it definitely will be a big boon. Hopefully Konami decides to make that the new card they unban off the list in the next ban list. And we play 3 Tenacity. Tenacity is another card that we will risk playing at 3 just because it's quite good. It's our generic searcher for pretty much every Monarch spell and trap in our deck. This spell card also is usually what I'm going to be using for fodder for Prime Monarch to banish from my graveyard to special summon the Prime Monarchs, which is another reason, or to banish for ideas. So that's another real strength of Tenacity of the Monarchs. We play the 1 Upstart and Foolish. Foolish is going to be sending Erebus most of the time so that Erebus can add himself back to our hand if we need it. So it's basically another copy of Erebus. 3 Stormforth, a great card. It outs so many threats. One of the things I really like about Monarchs is that they can out threat so easily between Erebus and Monarch Stormforth. It's just so quick to tribute over them or to shuffle them into the deck, which is amazing. This card, I want to see it in almost every single hand. I don't care if I'm going first or second. I mean, on my opponent's turn, something like a Monarch Stormforth and an Escalation plus Idea, I mean, it's over for the opponent. They can't do anything. I just get rid of whatever they put on field and lock them out of the extra deck. Then we play 3 Return of the Monarch. So this could go down to 1. So I do play this at 3, but you could play at 1. What's really nice about this is just that it searches your card. Once you've got 1 on the field, you're usually fine, but your opponent will destroy it pretty quickly if they are smart, because it does generate that continuous advantage. It might even be worth playing, I think, March 1 March and 2. I might end up switching that, though. In my testing, March of the Monarchs sometimes felt like it was a bit useless because people nowadays don't tend to target or destroy cards if they want to really get rid of them. But 1 March of the Monarchs might not be a terrible idea. We play Domain, so we're going to be playing 2 of those Domain. Domain is such a strong card for your Monarch deck. One of the main strengths of that, obviously, is that it's going to lock them out of the extra deck, and then on top of that, it's going to make all of your Monarchs do all of your tribute summon monsters do an extra 800 damage during the damage step, and for lastly, it's got an effect to reduce the level of your big Monarchs in your hand. And if you've got 2 copies in your hand, you can reduce their level by 4, which will allow you to just normal summon them, which is actually quite incredible. So Domain, a really good card. We play 1 Escalation. Escalation is just a nice card to have in general, just to allow you to summon on their turn, and especially when you bring out things like Erebus on your opponent's turn, or Vanity's Fiend or Majesty's Fiend, you can really prevent your opponent from being able to do much in the game. We play 1 Monarch's Erupt because it's skill drain. There's really no reason to play it, and it's so easy to see in this deck. You most of the time can get this to your hand in your first or second turn. And 3 Prime Monarch for that continuous tribute fodder and for that recycling and draw power, which is also quite nice. Moving on into our side deck. So the side deck for Monarchs is really simple. And you've got 2 scenarios. If you're against a back row decks, it's going to be your Lightning Storms and your Evenlies, just to get rid of those. If you're against any sort of monster deck, it's going to be your Nibiru's, your Phantasmes, and your Tactical Talents. Now, Tactical Talents can be swapped for mine. If you're going second, I would actually advise swapping. If you're like focusing more on going second, a really good strategy is switch out these 3 Tactical Talents and your Domains in games 2 and 3 for Mystic Mine, and then you can just play with that. However, because I am focusing on going first, I'd rather have the Tactical Talents just in case I need those against someone who's got loads of hand traps. But yeah, so your strategy is either going to be against monsters, you're going to be bringing out your Nibiru's and your Phantasmes, and then on your turn tributing over them to bring out your Monarchs. Against back row, you're going to be using the other cards. But yeah, that is my Monarch deck profile. This deck is really fun to play, and it's also super cheap. Almost every card in this deck can actually be got in the structure deck, and if it can't be got in the structure deck, it's still very cheap. I think I bought this deck in total for like £40 a while ago, so yeah, really, really cheap. I don't know how much that is in dollars, but it's still not that much in dollars either anyway. So yeah, guys, definitely look at playing Monarchs and trying out. Very fun deck to go with. And if you've enjoyed this, make sure to like and comment. Let me know what you want to see next. I'll be sure to have more videos out for you guys soon. I'll talk to you all later. Peace.